Yo, have you ever drank some water and then right after drinking it, you were still thirsty? You just drank a whole 12-ounce bottle of Aquafina water, but guess what? Your throat is still dry and you still thirsty. Like you just can't get satisfied. But you know what? Jesus experienced the same thing on the cross. How do we know this? Because he said, I thirst. Jesus ain't never said he thirsted before. You know why? Because he had never been separated from the Father, ever in all creation. But on the cross was the first time. So, just like Jesus thirsted because he had never been separated from the Father, he always had his thirst quenched and satisfied. We too can have our thirst quenched and satisfied if we accept the water that Jesus supplies. Yo, what it do? You know what it is. This is your man, Levon. This is Levon Says. Thanks for joining my channel on this Faith Over Fear Friday. You dig? Because today we're going to talk about having faith in the area when it comes to thirst, right? And not walking in fear and being thirsty. Let's get into it. Yo, on the cross, Jesus said, I thirst. The significance of that is because never throughout all of creation had Jesus ever thirsted, because he had always been in unity and one with the Father. But on the cross, he was separated from God for the first time ever in creation, because God couldn't look upon sin. So just the same way he was separated from the living water, he said, I thirst. After going through what he had went through, being beaten and being hung on the cross and having sin put on him, he said, I thirst. And this is the reason why he is the living water. This is the reason why we can drink of the water from his fountain and never thirst again, because he understands what it felt like to be separated from the Father and to have thirst. You dig? Because see, when we're separated from God, that's when we thirst. That's when no matter how much physical water we drink, our bodies will yet still thirst, because it's not that living water that springs up from on the inside from having God and Jesus making their abode in you with the Holy Spirit. You dig? So if you don't want to thirst no more, drink you some of that Jesus water. You dig? Because that's the type of water that satisfies, and you'll never be thirsty again. I know I've had water, y'all, that when I drank it, oh my gosh, it was like, is this really water? Like I ain't never tasted water before in my entire life. Like, it was the best thing. Like, you could have slapped your mama. It was so good. You know what I'm saying? I've had moments like that where my thirst has been it's been to such a degree that the water was so satisfying. Oh my God. Ooh, yeah. It was like that good. You know what I'm saying? Have you ever had something that, have you ever been so thirsty? Maybe you was out in the sun. Maybe, you just finished a 10K run or walk, or, maybe you engaged in some kind of activity that you were just like literally felt like your throat and your esophagus and everything else was just like cracking and about to crumble. And you tasted some water, and then when it went down, it was like almost like lotion to your insides. It was just so soothing and calming, and oh my, you know what I'm saying? You know how Gold Bond lotion is to your skin? That's how the water is to the inside of your throat and esophagus. Have you ever felt that kind of satisfying feeling from drinking water? Many of us are thirsty, and we don't even realize that it's thirst. We'll make excuses. We'll say, we want these things. We don't have these things. We desire these things, right? And no matter how much we try to attain these things, when we get them, we're still not satisfied. And then we wonder, okay, what is it? I thought I wanted this. I've got that. I'm still not satisfied. I've obtained this status or this level, and it's not enough. I've worked and I've done, I've bought, I've, acquired, and I'm still thirsty. It's because the only thing that's going to satisfy that thirst is the well that springs up from Christ. Nothing that we can do will ever satisfy that thirst. It may seem like it's quenched for a minute. It may seem like, we can get through it. But yet when the rubber meets the road and we really take self-examination, we're not satisfied and we're not happy. Why? Because we're still thirsty. God is the only one that can satisfy that thirst. So just like Jesus on the cross for the first time was saying, I thirst. Why? Because all the sin that had been placed upon him, he had been separated from God. And that separation from the everlasting water that supplies to where you're never thirsty, when Christ didn't have that for the first time ever, then he experienced what it was to thirst, what it was to not having that well of living water connected constantly. There was a disconnect, and that's why there was a thirst. If there's a thirst in your life, it's because there's a disconnect, and we need the well of living water to be connected so we're no longer thirsty. You dig? I can hear you saying, but that's not my thirst. Maybe water's not my thing. Maybe you thirsty after you're thirsty because of loneliness. You want somebody in your life. You're thirsty for that. You truly desire that. But no matter how many people you have in your life, it never seems to satisfy. Come on, am I talking to somebody? Your thirst may be some kind of drug, right? Pills, meth, weed, alcohol, whatever it may be. But yet, is it satisfying? You can take line after line, snort, you can shoot up after shoot up, you can drink, you can do it for days on end. But when the rubber meets the road, are you still thirsty for it? It's not satisfying. Okay, well, maybe your thirst is attention, recognition, right? Affirmation, right? And that's what you desire. You deserve to be affirmed. You desire to be, recognized. You desire to be acknowledged. You desire to be, honored and announced. But yet, when you are honored, when you are announced, when you do get the standing ovations and the recognition, and when you get the credit, you still are not satisfied. Can anybody relate to what I'm talking about? There's something on the inside of us that yearns a greater purpose. There's something on the inside of us that says, I know this cannot be all there is to it. Right? And so, we're seeking and we're searching. We're, whether it's a higher state of consciousness, whether it's a greater level of knowledge and understanding of what truth is. But yet within all of that, we still have to understand, and we still have to know that we are yet human. And Christ showed us the way. He showed us. He didn't complain. He didn't cry. He didn't bitch and moan. He didn't, send an email. He didn't call the congressman. No, but what did he do? He endured for us. He took on sin for us. He was separated for our behalf, for our sakes. He did that for us because he loved us. Right? So we ought to recognize and understand the sacrifice that he did for us. We ought to recognize and understand the sin that he took on for us. He paid the price for us so that we wouldn't have to pay the price, so that our children's children would not have to pay the price if we lead them in the way of righteousness and to believe on his name, because he is the only way. You dig? So when it comes to things that you thirsting after, right? Whether it's physical things, whether it's you can't be satisfied sexually, so you constantly searching for the greatest sex, the best sex partner. You constantly searching for the next thrill. You constantly trying to create and look for the next big thing that's gonna be the next thing that catches everybody's eye on the internet, on Instagram, on Facebook or YouTube, whatever. Trying to look for the next thing because we're not satisfied. Being thirsty. It's time out for being thirsty. Look, in John 19, starting at verse 18, it says that he was hung, right? So imagine every strike of the nail, whether in his hands or his feet, he was taking on sin of the world. Sin from past, present sin, and all sin that will ever happen in the future for them that believe, right? So as he's hanging on the cross, right? As he's hanging with this sin on him, he's now separated from his Father, because God can't look upon sin. And for the first time ever in all of created history that we understand time and existence, he's separated because of the sin that he's taken on of the world, past, present, and future. And so now that he's separated, now he feels the thirst from not having that eternal spring, that eternal well of living water, that connection with God. It's been severed, it's been separated. And so now he doesn't have that. So for the first time, he's experiencing thirst. So when he said on the cross, I thirst, he was talking spiritually, but also physically, him being now separated from the Father, now being fully human, taking on all sin. There was only one sin left, right? He thirsted. He said, I thirst. So now, instead of having that thirst satisfied by the Father, that thirst had to be satisfied by the world. And the world's satisfaction of thirst is always going to be bitter and terrible, right? It's not going to be sweet and satisfied. It wasn't like Jesus on the cross and he's separated from God now, and he turns to the world basically and says, I thirst. And the world then gave him honey and sugar water, right? No, they gave him what? Something that's nasty and bitter and horrible, terrible. Vinegar. Have y'all ever tasted vinegar? Listen, I ain't talking about on your food, like on some greens or like, in water when we put hot sauce and you drink it down. No. Just take some straight vinegar and put it like in a little shot cup and slam that down and see how that tastes. See if you can even keep it down, first of all. It's nasty. It's gross. It's horrible, right? And this is what he received from the world. So he'd already taken on the sin of past, the sin of the present, and all future sin that was ever going to happen. But now not having that well of everlasting water connection with the Father, right? Now he thirsted, and turning to the world, they finally gave him that last bit of sin, the horrible, nasty taste in his mouth that he took down, as in being able to say in the next part of it is finished. Not only is it finished, that I did what you assigned me to do, God, from the garden, from before the garden, right? Not only did I complete the work that you assigned me to do, and I ministered into your name, and I brought folks into salvation, and I pointed them to you, never taking any credit for myself, except saying that I am the door, I'm the way. You can only get to him through me. But what he did was he took that final bit of sin that was given from the world. So therefore, he could say, it is finished, because I've taken upon all sin. It is finished. So we see how after that, right, after he was risen, after that, then we can have the eternal lasting water for always. Because if we believe in him, he said that him and his Father will come in and make their abode with us. But in thirsting, what are you thirsting after on today that you're not being satisfied? What is it that you're thirsty after? You're chasing, you're looking for, you're yearning for, you're desiring, you're sacrificing for, that you may have obtained it many times over and over and over, but it doesn't matter. It's not satisfying. What is that thing? When you discover that that thing or things will never be able to satisfy, can I suggest that you turn to the living water? Can I suggest that you drink you some Jesus water so that you can finally not walk around here and being thirsty? That's mentally, that's emotionally, and spiritually. Get you some Jesus water and be satisfied. One love, this is your man Levon, and this was your Faith Over Fear Friday Quick Minute. I'm out.